ICQ Podcast episode 278, Hamfest 2018. Well, hello fellow Amateur Ham Radio enthusiasts to our 278th episode of the ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast, supported by Avi Solomon, Danny Robertson, GM6, Charlie Mike Quebec, Brett Stelbaum, and Ger Matthews, Golf 1 Victor Whiskey Charlie, and of course our monthly and annual subscription donors. In this episode, Martin M1MRB is joined by Matthew Mike 0 November Juliet X-Ray and Bill November 3 Juliet India X-Ray to discuss the latest Amateur Ham Radio news. Myself, Colin M6BOY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is our review of Hamfest 2018. Well, as always, it's your kind donations that keep the show advert free, and we'd like to thank Avi and Brett, along with Danny Robinson, GM6, Charlie and Mike Quebec, who said thanks for doing the podcast. I enjoy listening to them and the info contained in the production 73. So thanks for that, Danny. Also a message here from Gail, I think it's pronounced, who we also met at RSGB convention this weekend. So he said, thanks guys for keeping me educated and entertained as I return to amateur radio after a 25-year break. Look forward to all your collective wisdom and silliness every other week. So you're more than welcome. And to say it's great to catch up with you in person at RSGB convention as well recently. Those donations, along with our monthly and subscription donors, are a wonderful base to help us keep us advert free. We're out and about doing a lot of outside stuff at the moment, so it is certainly helping fuel the team as well while we're out doing certain projects for you. So it really makes me very humbled that the donation and value model is working for us and people are finding value in what we do and sending donations in. As always, though, don't sit back and let others do all the lifting. You can help out by visiting www.icqpodcast.com/donate, where anything you send away is always greatly appreciated. So now we join Martin, Matthew and Bill to discuss the latest amateur ham radio news, including solar minimum chill and how Allied World War II bombing changed the ionosphere. Hope you enjoy.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to this episode 278 of the ICQ podcast. And for this episode, our news roundtable. We're a bit short on the ground, but we're still going to have fun. We have Mr. Matthew Nassau, M0NJX.
Hello everyone.
Hi Matt, and Mr. Bill Barnes at N3JIX.
Good evening, everyone. You just got the JX twins tonight.
You have, and I know you were most disappointed because Leslie weren't here, and Bill, I did put on one of little profile pages on one of our rolling demos. Bill likes winding Leslie up.
That is true, and I got to miss my tell Leslie a joke to see if you can get him laugh gag I usually do before we record. Yeah. Oh well, next time.
Yeah, and Mr. Edmund Spicer's not with us tonight. He was out with us a couple of weeks ago, and he's busy tonight. He did tell me he's busy tonight, but Leslie didn't sound too well when we spoke to him a little while ago, so get well soon, Leslie. Our first news story, and the chill of the solar minimum. We started talking about this, and they're saying that the upper atmosphere in the ionosphere in the solar minimum is starting to chill. Bit strange, I'd suggest, Bill, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. A very fascinating article, which I spent way too much time looking at it. But basically, they've had a satellite up. What did we figure out? 17 years, Matt?
Yeah, 17.
And they've been able to witness some solar cycle, solar maximums, solar minimums. And as we roll into the solar minimum, which we're marching towards the depressing solar minimum, that the thermosphere cools and the distance of the atmosphere shrinks a little bit. And so it's good because it's low drag on satellites. It's bad because we can't bounce signals off of this high because the whole thing shrinks a little bit. So it's a very interesting article. It's not dramatic shrinking, but it's enough that they actually can measure it now. And they actually went back in time and used the mechanisms that they figured out based on the observations from the satellite to figure out how things looked in the past based on other numbers that they were able to figure out. And it's pretty steady. It's, during solar maximum, the upper parts of the atmosphere is slightly warmer, and during, solar minimums, it's cooler than normal. So it's very, very interesting article that we have out here on this.
Yeah, and it's, as I said, I think the title suggests that it's kind of the end of the world, and the atmosphere is contracting and it's all bad news, but it's just part of the pattern. It's part of the solar cycle. As you get towards the bottom of the solar cycle over the preceding years, there's less solar activity. The atmosphere is starting to cool at the upper regions, this thermosphere, the outermost layer, and it's getting smaller. Now the numbers themselves are impressive. I think the measurement of power that's in the upper atmosphere being heated by the sun is measured in something like 10 to the power of 11 watts. So is that 100 million billion watts, I think? So the energy level is enormous. And when it's really hot, quote unquote hot, because it's never that hot up there, we're talking about 4 or 5 times 10 to the power of 11 watts. So you're in a region of 2 times, 3 times, 4 times hotter or cooler, depending on your perspective, at these points in the solar cycle. But as Bill was saying, this is analysis that's been done and sort of extrapolated into the past. So we've gone back to the numbers in the article go back to like the 1950s. So essentially the space age, and this regular pattern of the 11 years is very visible. So interesting stuff. I have one question though. If the atmosphere is getting cooler, or the thermosphere is getting cooler, right? Things are condensing. Hot gases expand, cold gases contract. So the gas is getting denser. So the molecules and the things like electrons and so forth are getting closer together. So does that mean that the propagation improves because there's a closer proximity of electrons together? Electron density is increased. Don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I do have 2 brief things to follow up on here quick before we turn over to Martin. Yeah, 33 billion watts. Is that number you gave out, but that's 10 times smaller than what they see during the maximum. They actually quoted that in there. The other one is at the very edge of the thermosphere, 600 kilometers up. If I'm reading this graph right, it's roughly when the sun's shining on the planet, solar max is like 1200 degrees Kelvin versus solar minimum. It's around a little under 800 degrees Kelvin. It's still really hot. It's just that it's a measurable difference that we're actually seeing with these satellites now.
That is hot, because a Kelvin is I do the math, minus 273 degrees Celsius, 0 degrees Kelvin. And so for every Kelvin you go up, you basically count 1 Celsius, more or less. So about 270 Kelvin is about freezing, and so forth. So that's really hot. That is a really hot gas, surprisingly. I guess maybe it's simply really thin anyway, that it's not like hot molten lead or something. You can. It's the 33 billion watts of infrared energy just hitting you. Yeah.
So that's why it's hot. Likewise, I mean, I remember from the various lunar missions, they had to stay out there during the light, not only just because they needed light to work with, but because it got so dramatically cold, and the spacesuits were designed for taking extreme heat, but not necessarily extreme cold. I mean, there was something along those lines I remember reading, because the dramatic difference between sunlight and absence of sunlight is just this phenomenal delta that's just too hard on pretty much everything.
Yeah. Well, you think of the International Space Station goes around 90 minutes, so for 45 minutes roughly, whatever, half that time it's in the sun, then it's in the dark. You can imagine the thermal shock that it's receiving, right? It's hundreds of degrees either way. Yeah.
Yes, and that's not quite that high. Because I can't remember what the International Space Station doesn't orbit that high. It's 100 kilometers up.
I don't know the number, but it's low Earth orbit object or something, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's in miles. It doesn't help. 408 kilometers. So it's in the middle of that zone. So you're right. It does get as dramatic. That's halfway up. So that does get a dramatic shift in temperature.
Martin, what do you think?
I remember going to a club talk by a scientist talking about the solar activity, and he was describing our ionosphere as a plasma. Now, to me, plasma is always hot, so these numbers starting to make a little bit more sense, unless I'm totally off the wrong planet here. But equally, these extra satellites we got up there, we're now able to make measurements that we've never been able to make before. So it's not all doom and gloom, I would suggest, boys, is it?
No. Hopefully not. I mean, it's, as you say, we're learning a bit of the universe every day. When the longer we have these satellites up there, and the more we ask questions, the more we know. Knowledge is power, so it's all good.
Yeah. Well, that's good on that one. Well, moving on to our second news story, which is kind of semi-related as well, and it basically talks about Allies bombing in World War II, altering the ionosphere. Now, I guess that every bombing would alter the ionosphere, but they were able to check the ionosphere differences, or the Allies checked what was happening, and it's phenomenal. Some of these bombing rays were the equivalent of 30 lightning strikes, so I think it's quite an interesting one, don't you, Matt?
Yeah, so I spotted this on the BBC website, and it's an interesting article. You think of what controls or in fact changes or impacts the ionosphere, right? We are radio users. It's what we use to at least to communicate HF and long distance. And most of the influences of the ionosphere we think of as coming from outside, like the sun, solar wind, cosmic radiation, things like that. We just talked about the solar cycle and things happen up there. And indeed, scientists study this sort of behaviors of the ionosphere, and they do radio tests, radio sondes, which sample and listen for essentially echoes, if you like, of radio waves going up and down. According to different frequencies, they can plot the behavior of the ionosphere way up, hundreds of kilometers up. But you wouldn't think necessarily that an explosion at ground level, which is on the grand scheme of things not enormous, I will talk about scale in a minute, would actually reach up to the heights of the ionosphere and actually affect the ionosphere. So this article is talking about a study that was published in September 2018 and looked at the bombing raids over Germany during World War II with Allied aircraft, understanding I think the Department of Defense or the history books have explained how many bombs were dropped, what aircraft were used, when they started, when they stopped. Quite a lot of details. What kind of explosives were used, high explosives versus regular explosives and so forth. And so the scientists were able to quantify to some extent the energy that was dropped at certain times of the day during World War II. In parallel to that, over in Slough in the UK, which is a town near Heathrow Airport, just outside the West London, there was a radio atmospheric science lab, essentially, that was daily doing these radio samples of the upper ionosphere, looking at the relative frequencies that would return. So they measure a thing called critical frequency, where you send up radio waves, and the highest frequency that just returns, and anything higher does not return, it's called the critical frequency. And that, of course, changes with times of the year and times of the day and so forth. The paper and the scientists in this article mapped the two time frames. They took the days and dates of these radio tests in Slough versus the bombing that was happening in Europe, worked out the relative time gaps. This happened at 8 o'clock, the bombing happened at 12 o'clock, or vice versa. And they extrapolated behavior of the bombing influencing the radio observations. And they found that there was an average of about something like 0.3 megahertz change in the critical frequency that was available in the ionosphere at the time of the bombings, and because of the effect of those bombings. And that's really quite staggering. I mean, localized, as things Martin mentioned, the energy release from all of this tonnage of explosives is equivalent to 300, or I think the article mentioned 300 lightning strikes located, in some geographical area, which is an enormous amount of energy. I think we can all appreciate that. But what you wouldn't expect is it to actually reach up hundreds of kilometers and actually have an effect on the atmosphere at that level. So I thought it was an amazing article. Something to think about.
Yeah, it's something that we just wouldn't have thought about as amateurs. We know very little about our planet, and there's obviously a lot of scientific work going on in the background all around the world by governments that we'll never ever know about. But this is very interesting. I mean, I should imagine the bomb they dropped on Hiroshima would have been even bigger and caused even more problems, wouldn't it, Bill?
Oh yeah. The thing with this everything Matt said is just an amazing overview of the actual research they did. When this whole thing was brought up and I was reading the paper and stuff, it struck my memory that's like, oh wow, I remember reading something like this, 30 years ago in reference to the atomic bombs, and it's it's a similar kind of thing that they were able to take measurements back then, mainly listening to BBC transmission signals on various bands in 1962 during some of these atmospheric tests, and they noticed similar things. So it's one of those, this is one of those mysteries that's like, hey, after these big bombing runs, they noticed HF changed, but no one really figured out some of this stuff until today. And it's like just amazing to me that people are still studying this stuff. They're still looking at all these different pieces of data, and they're coming around and they're coming up with these conclusions. And it's things that we never thought about and never knew about until someone sat down. In the article that Matt was talking about, was C.J. Scott and P. Major that they are the two folks that authored the paper and did all this research. It's just phenomenal. So when this article comes out, or when Colin posts on the website, I recommend everyone just read this article. It's just fascinating, the kind of research they did to figure this out.
Yeah, certainly. And the interesting thing is that we would have never known about this sort of thing. It's something that you don't necessarily think about, but phenomenally interesting, and as I say, really worth a read there. So I hasten to add onto that one.
Just maybe we'll put the link to the article. The paper itself is available as a PDF on the internet, so we'll put the link into that so people can read it.
No problems at all, Matt. No problems at all on that one. Okay, well, moving on to the next one. Not really amateur radio, but it has radio involved, and it's a bit of fun, and it's interesting, and it's another use of radio technology. And it says the UK's rarest lizards to be tracked by tiny radio tags. And these are little radio tags they stick on them. Phenomenal little devices, aren't they, Matt?
Yeah, and when you ask the question, how small is small? Well, for a start, the lizards that are being released are about the size of your finger, and they're pretty small things. But the transmitters that are being glued onto the backs of these reptiles are in the range of about 0.3 of a gram, which is, I don't know, you're measuring postage stamps. It's that kind of scale of weight. It seems incredibly small. And it's quite a nice use of radio. I mean, it's just like the fox hunting idea where you hide a transmitter and you go and find it. They're actually going to put the transmitters on these little critters and let them go, and then come back and see how they evolve in the wild. Although I think the amount of time they'll have is pretty limited, maybe a couple of weeks, as the transmitters naturally have a fairly small battery supply to operate with. But it kind of raises a question, right? Where do these transmitters come from? Because they really are, small. They have to be smaller than a fingernail to some extent. And I would have thought the natural process is that this release of lizards being reared, they're rare lizards trying to be reinstated back into the UK countryside. It's coming from a university background, right? There's a university working with a zoo, helping to incubate and grow a breed of lizards and release them. So if you're working at the university and you're working in the zoology lab, you'd probably go over to your friends in the electronics or, engineering group and say, hey guys, I want to do this little field experiment with these reptiles. Can you please make me some small transmitters? What do you think? And I would have thought it was kind of that, internal discussion and negotiation amongst academic colleagues. But it seems actually there's a whole industry, or cottage industry at least, about making and selling these transmitters just for the purposes of biology research. I found a reference to a company in another paper which wasn't connected to this article, and went to their website, and they basically will make a transmitter for pretty much any creature you want to track. So you literally click on a picture. Do you want to talk about lizards, bats, turtles, rabbits, you name it, and they'll take you to their selection of transmitters of a certain size. And these little transmitters, they just work on, I guess, different frequencies. So each each transmitter gets its own frequency, and it's simply a crystal-controlled multi-vibrator, circuit, which is just oscillating away and radiating out a short antenna, which is also part of the package, maybe a couple of centimeters long, depending on the animal and the scale of the transmitter. But really kind of a fun article. It's I guess you think about them. They put a transmitter on American bald eagles, right? They want to track them. They're rare in the U.S. And they have these little things hanging off the legs. But it seems that technology is catching up and making this a lot more distributed and a lot more enabling for even really small creatures to be monitored.
Yeah, well, interesting, guys, and I'm surprised that neither you or Bill, in a pre-show discussion, decided to try and find these and put them on your kids' hi. But what do you think, Bill?
There's no need for that because they already have our iPhones.
Ugh. Don't get me going on that. I was thinking about attaching a taser to the kids when they get out of the range. They get zapped, so they stop running off. But, everyone's like, oh, my God, you can't say stuff like that. You can't do stuff like that. They'll keep them from running off. But the neat thing about this thing that Matt sent out was these things are a package that they're made, and they just glue them on the animal and let them go. And like Matt was saying, the standard life on the one is 7 days. The other one's 21 days. And these things are very simple, but they're very effective because they are simple. They're simple little transmitters. They solder two wires together to get them going, which I just love that. I just thought that was great directions. Hey, I can follow that. Just solder these two wires going, and the thing starts beeping. Well, it's not beeping, it's pulsing. But anyway, the idea being is then you set up your sensors, your receivers around an area, listening for the frequency ranges, figuring out the pulses it receives, tracks it back to which one you're using, because apparently that's how they do it. They do it by frequency, and they do it by pulse rate. So either way, I spent way too much time once Matt sent the company link out, clicking through here, because exactly what he was saying, there is a whole bunch of series of these that are available for different kinds of research purposes. Very fascinating article.
And it's not just lizards. It's birds, fish, large mammals, small mammals, frogs. They seem to have a transponder of some description for any animal on Earth. So interesting, really cool.
Yeah, well, I kind of like this. Although it was an amateur radio, I did kind of like this because it's another use of radio, and people sometimes often forget that radio's around, but this is something that somebody doing a university degree or working in this sort of industry would find interesting. And for us, well, it's something also interesting because you never know. You may be walking out one day and find this little tag thing on the ground somewhere, because lizards shed their skin every so many weeks. You might find this thing, think, what is this? You can imagine in 500 years or more, when the archaeologists are going around looking for things, they come across them. I think they'll have quite a bit of fun, don't you guys?
Absolutely. They'll wonder what was it stuck to at some point. Was it a small child?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or what was this thing originally for anyway?
Yeah. Yeah.
So all in all, a bit of fun, but quite good. Last news story today, because our feature's going to run long anyway. The ARRL have been talking to the FCC, re the uncertified importing of VHF, UHF radios, transceivers. I was quite heavy about this a couple of weeks ago, but it looks like sense might have prevailed, Bill, doesn't it?
Yes, it does seem that way. The article is the ARRL and the FCC are discussing the issues of uncertified imported VHF, UHF transceivers. And basically the gist of the article is they're talking. Equipment coming in, if it's sold to amateurs to be used on amateurs, frequencies only, should be good because of the various rules for FCC for equipment. It should be good. So they're trying to make sure it's good. The problem that they clearly state in here is there are some companies that are buying these things for resale, and they're selling them to the general public, but they're not certified to be used for the general public. But they can be used in the amateur bands by licensed amateurs. So they're working on clearing up that language a little bit to, reduce this whole confusion, which is good.
Well, I hope so, Bill, because I was getting off my high horse on this one a couple of weeks ago. So it does sound that sense has come to its right conclusion.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Matt, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I maybe I'm coming to it a bit late. I haven't seen the history of this thing evolve, I guess, but it sounds like the sensible voice of amateur radio practitioners are saying, look, with our licensees in the U.S., but I presume any of our listeners around the world would do the same thing. You follow your band plans, you follow your entitlements for your license. You worked hard for that license. Whether or not you're paying for it, it's free or whatever, I don't mind. But in the hobby, I think we all understand what it means to go out of band, what it means to cause interference, and I don't think any of us knowingly and willingly would do that. So being able to respond and say, look, let's get the legislation or the comments from the FCC correct, put it in practice. Amateur radio in the amateur bands, you've got no problems, no worries about it. So don't try and tar us with the same issues of pirates and people just randomly buying these things and just switching them on and causing all sorts of mayhem. So I think it's good.
Yeah, well, let's hope it continues the way both all three of us think, rather, that it's all going to be sorted out. We behave ourselves, and I'm sure it'll get sorted out, and I'll be able to bring my Baofeng out to the States next year, because Dan did say if it got confiscated he's going to buy me a new one. But no, I think it'll all sort itself out by then. All right.
If that's Dan's promise, don't forget to take your Elecraft as well.
He said it was only a Baofeng. He said he would replace like for like, because
in hand luggage. Don't forget that, hey Dan.
yeah. No, the boys did suggest that if I had a very expensive digital handy, D-Star radio, would he replace that? And he said, no, I'll replace a Baofeng with a Baofeng. And that's a bit of fun. I wouldn't hold Dan to it, in fairness. I know he made the offer. The Baofeng didn't cost me an absolute fortune, and that's why I would probably bring it, because if I lose it, hey hum, move on, So it's not the end of the world. I've got a couple that I would be very upset if I lost, so that one I wouldn't particularly. So yeah.
This is to Dayton, right? Is this your plan for Dayton next year?
Yes, certainly is. Well, we're going to need some form of comms.
But I remember at Dayton, certainly last year or the year before, I think I read it in QST magazine, people were taking their Baofengs and other handies to get them tested. I think the ARRL had a test stand there, and it would sweep it for spectral purity and out-of-band behaviors and harmonics and stuff like that. And not all of the brands that were tested fared that well, namely some of the lower-end items. So you might want to get it checked out.
Yeah, I think mine's been swept. I've done a couple of tests on mine, and I had a look at it on a spectrum analyzer. But yeah, I'm willing to listen there, and maybe we'll very well do that. So that's a good one. Okay, well that just about closes up the news stories. As I say, a short run tonight. There's only a few of us, and also hopefully we got a long feature. Colin tells me it's a long one. So at the National Hamfest. So going around the table, Bill, what have you been up to?
Between the last time we talked, I went on vacation. Ocean City, New Jersey. Took the kids down there. That's always fun. I'm still messing around with the Hermes Light 2.0. And I'm also testing, the Hermes Light quickly. At this point now, I'm trying to get, a nice case for it to fit in. Trying to figure out exactly what software settings I want to use with it. But it's a really neat little board to play around with. Still haven't made a QSO on it, but I'm getting there. Which brings to the next thing is I've been testing WSJTX version 2, the release candidate 2. That's neat. I think that's going to be really nice when that comes out as the final, here you go. Worked a couple stations on that so far. I haven't worked anybody using the 77-bit mode yet, but we're getting there. Which leads to the next thing I'm testing, playing with. FT8 call is now JS8 call, which is good. No confusion now. Playing with that as well. And that's working really well for me. But at this point, I'm listening to a lot of folks are out there using it. It's getting more popular, which is good as well. I did work in the CQ Worldwide RTTY contest for a couple weeks ago. Well, I was like I said, I only got a couple stations, like 32 or something, but that was fun. I always liked that contest. It's just a weekend because I was traveling back from the Ocean City. I just didn't get to spend much time at the shack. And then this weekend, when you're listening to this podcast, it will be Pennsylvania QSO Party, my favorite contest of the year. CQ contest. Here we go. Pennsylvania QSO Party. This is the one where people go around to different counties. You work all the counties in Pennsylvania, trying to get clean. They call it clean sweep when you work all the counties. Really fun contest that happens this weekend. Well, but like I said, by the time it's released, and I live in a county where we're kind of rare, so I'm aware of myself is going to be on the air for a little bit, and my neighbor down the road, Jack W3GY, he's like 3 or 4 miles down the road. He's going to be on as well. So at least some people will be working from the county. And that, like I said, that's one of my favorite contests. So I'll probably have a post-game show analysis next month.
Right. Well, that sounds all fun. It sounds like you've been doing a hell of a lot there. And as I say, I envy you in many ways. My favourite contest, and I've probably said this a few times, is the 80-metre contest, the Irish 80-metre contest on New Year's Day. It only runs for 4 hours, and you get 4 points for working a station in Ireland and 1 point for anywhere else. And it's not a 5-9 contest. They come and have a chat. I couldn't believe it. You'd be working, somebody said, I told Pat you're down here. He'll be down in a minute. So it was great. But there you go. Matt, what have you been up to?
Well, what have I been up to? I'm trying to think what I confessed to the last time I was on the show. I'll just go through my list, I guess. So I did deliver a club talk, which was about a month ago. I don't know whether it was. I think you discussed it maybe on the last podcast, but I really enjoyed it. It was about a homemade antenna rotator, and I'm really pleased that the club turned up. There was probably like 20 people there, so I felt good explaining it and getting the feedback and so forth. So that was a good constructive club moment. I enjoyed that. What else? I'll talk about the club again. What day is today? Wednesday. So Monday night at the Monday Night Club down at Sutton and Cheam in southwest London, I found out that we came as a club 11th out of 65 in a contest that was held in June, the Practical Wireless Magazine's 2-meter SSB contest, like a 5-watt limit. And I thought it was a fantastic result. And I maybe take the opportunity on the podcast to say congratulations to everyone, because I think the way we operated, and we worked pretty hard on that microphone on the day from the back of the car, and the little ZL special. Your antenna, your Yagi, Martin, was put up there and turning it around and trying to work the UK and trying to work Belgium or whoever else was listening over the coast, and to come 11th compared to some of the other stations and all their Versa towers and stacked Yagis and so forth. I think we did a fantastic job. So really, really good stuff. And I think following on from that, having the experience of the 2-meter SSB, I kind of wanted to play a bit more with SSB and CW in a local context. Not least because there's probably a bit more space to try and fail at CW on 2 meters in the UK than there is on 20 meters or 40 meters, where you just have to talk to somebody and try to stumble through a QSO. But I bought myself my first 2-meter, my first Yagi antenna. It's a 2-meter 5-element Yagi to enable myself to try SSB and CW on 2 meters locally. And I kind of got the bug from that club event, the contest. So I guess that's part of, the fun of it, right? Getting exposed to a contest, enjoying the competition, learning a different mode, and kind of investing in it personally. So I've got that to play with, and it was working quite well. And because of that, I decided to put up a permanent collinear for 2 meters and 70 SEMS in the backyard here. Stepping out of my comfort zone, leaving an antenna up all the time, wired into the house on the back of my mobile. But the result was on Tuesday night. We had a club net on the local GB3XP repeater here in the UK, and it was a great event. I mean, Martin, you were there, as were a few others, and it seemed to be an unusually large number. You were saying it's sort of 6 or 7 calls joined the event. We talked for about an hour and a half, and I thought that was good engagement. I think, there is an active population out there that's using 2 meters. It was good. And lastly, I don't know if I mentioned SOTA on the podcast last time, but I had a go at SOTA for the first time. A couple of local hills in the southeast of England with Chris M0TCH. He was the driver for the day and probably the instigator of the whole idea. But I went along and carried some stuff, and we had a great time. So I really enjoyed that. Did a summit to summit contact with an Austrian peak that was about 2,000 meters up. So that was fantastic. We worked Malta, we worked Latvia, Switzerland, the whole kind of gamut of mountainous terrain, or maybe SOTA chasers. I don't know. Really enjoyed it. So definitely going to do that again. And towards that, the club, Sutton and Cheam, we had a club, what's the word for it? Little build project to build SOTA beam linked dipole. So Chris and Martin, I think, arranged for a kind of a bulk buy of parts, and we've been working out individually as kits to put together a little portable, 20 meter, 40 meter plus 30 meters or 17. I don't know. Haven't figured out yet. Bands to operate on. So, it's been a nice active month for me in radio, getting back into it. So, and I'm starting to look for various bits and pieces to improve SOTA experience, like a nice DSP speaker, portable speaker or something, and a nice, fiberglass pole and bits and pieces and blah, blah, blah. So, radio's alive and well in the QTH.
Yeah, sounds good to me, Matt. And it's quite strange because you, Chris, and Martin and I all come from the same club. We do a lot of things fairly similar. I mean, one thing you didn't mention, and we pretty much mention this every time because it's the way it is, we were at HMS Belfast last weekend, which was once again very enjoyable. The Link Dipole project, we spoke to SOTA Beams and bought a number of kits, and the idea is to get the guys an HF antenna up, or for those who want to go portable, an HF antenna. And this is a very, very cost-effective way of doing it, and it works very, very well. And it's within the scope of everybody. And although foundation license holders are not allowed to build transmitters, there's nothing to stop them building antennas. So That involves the lower licensed members of the club equally. From my point of view, yeah, one other thing we did, Matt, you mentioned the 11th in the 2-metre SSB contest, low power contest. We came 10th in the SSB field day, I believe.
No, hey, that's amazing. Hey? That's fantastic.
Yeah, we came 10th on that, which was quite surprising. We had a lot of bits and pieces of trouble on that day, but I think we did well. We were out there, we were on the air, and effectively we're not a serious contest group. So to come 10th, for us to come 10th, it's like winning it, in all honesty, for our little group. So we were over the moon on that one. And apart from that, we were at National Hamfest. Edmund, Martin, Chris, myself and Colin were at the National Hamfest a couple of weeks ago. Met a lot of listeners, and I thank each and every one of you who popped by and said hi. That's most appreciated, and a few of you grabbed us for pictures and all sorts of things. But we really had a good time, and yeah, great. And one or two of you guys, if you're listeners now, who came across to us in the while we were having our evening meal in the pub. And yeah, we were getting a bit loud, I'm afraid, and enjoying ourselves. And a couple of amateurs did come across and say hi. But as I say, that was pleasurable to see you as well. And we thoroughly enjoyed the whole weekend. So all in all, yeah, I'm going to build my link dipole antenna, and so I'll then have two, and my one will eventually live out in Ireland full time, but that's where it's going eventually. So all in all, a busy old time. From me, this weekend, by the time this episode goes out, we will have covered off a session at the RSGB convention. We're been invited to cover one of their lecture streams, where we're going to record that, and hopefully there'll be some audio for you guys later on what we did there. So all in all, a very busy time, I'd say, for all three of us.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah. More of it.
Hear, hear.
So I'd like to thank the pair of you for joining me tonight. Otherwise, I'd have been babbling on my own. Well, it would have been like a feature then, wouldn't it? I'd like to thank Matty Nassau, M0NJX.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And Mr. Bill Barnes, N3JIX.
Not a problem, and thank you again.
Yeah, good to have you guys here. Cheers, Bill. We'll say 73s.
73s.
What are you doing Sunday morning on the 18th of November 2018? How about joining the ICQ podcast team and many amateurs from across the southern England at one of the friendliest rallies of the year? I'm talking about the 41st Cats Radio and Electronics Bazaar, run by the Colin Amateur Radio Society. Doors open at 10. There'll be trade stands there, club stands, and small traders. Special interest groups will be there to talk to and find out more what's going on. The car parking's free. The best thing about it though is the admission's only £1.50, and that includes a free cup of tea or coffee. But what I will say is get there early because the sausage rolls are great. If you need any more information, please contact Mr. Andy Bryars, G0KZT. on 0772 986 6600, and we look forward to seeing you there.
So now it's time to have a look at the news in brief from me, Colin M6BOY. We start off with news of FUNcubes here, and the FUNcube team have announced that AO73 is now in full-time amateur radio mode. What this means is FUNcube 1 has now been in direct sunlight for over a month, and it's been transmitting continually on high-power telemetry for most of that time. It's now been changed to a full-time amateur radio mode, so the transponder is available now for all stations to use. with more stable board temperatures being experienced. It means the transponder frequencies are now also more stable. FUNcube 2 transponder on UCube 1 continues as well to be in full-time transponder mode. There are occasional breaks in service for a few seconds when the OBC reboots and other onboard transmitter sends its CW beacon. And finally, FUNcube 3 on NAFI 1 it continues to perform normally with high-power telemetry when in sunlight and amateur mode when eclipse. So certainly good to hear an update for how the FUNcubes are getting on. We've got a link on the ICQ podcast website. We can find out more information on how those are coming along. Some unfortunate news now. Past RSGB President Alexander Davison Patterson, OBE, Golf India 3, Kilo Yankee Papa, has unfortunately passed away on the 10th of October at home surrounded by family. Patterson was better known as Barney and was the RSGB president in 1967. He travelled widely throughout his presidency, and among his many achievements oversaw the purchase of 28 Little Russell Street in London as the then new RSGB HQ office. Patterson wasn't only just active in the UK amateur radio field, he also had the Irish call sign EI4 Bravo Charlie and served as president of the Irish Radio Transmitter Society in 1972 and 1971, and is the only person ever to hold both posts. So obviously our thoughts go to Alexander Barney's family at this difficult time. Rounding up our news in brief section, EchoLink is now connected to the Irish DMR network. It's one of the latest improvements to the DMR network, and is the establishment of a link work provided by a gentleman called John Anson at Mike India 0 Alpha Alpha Zulu. Anyone connecting to Mike India 0 Alpha Alpha Zulu Lima under links on the EchoLink network will now connect to the talk group 2724 on the Irish DMR network. So again, as always, guys, links on icqpodcast.com for you to check out for more information. Well, now we head over to our features episode, which is our feature on Hamfest 2018. As always, guys, hope you enjoy.
And now, what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast.
Well, hi everyone, this is Colin M6BOY, and welcome to this episode's feature. 2 weeks ago, UK Hamfest was on at the Newark Showgrounds in the UK, and whilst all the big announcements had already been made at Friedrichshafen and at Hamvention, we still scurried around the show and hopefully found some interesting pieces along the way to let you know about. We start our roundup of the show with the RSGB's Planning Committee. They've launched a new members booklet detailing advice in mounting antennas. John Mattox explains the steps and advice to consider when mounting antennas.
We do stress that the first thing you should do when you're thinking about putting any antenna system up that requires permission, virtually anything other than a wire dipole attached to the tree at the bottom between the house and a tree, in very simple terms, virtually anything else requires permission. Even a vertical attached to the end gable of the house, if it projects significantly above the ridgeline, strictly speaking needs permission. Many will turn a blind eye to it, much as they do with TV aerials or satellite dishes. There are provisions for satellite dishes, but get in mind what you want to do. Talk to your neighbours. By all means, talk to your neighbours. And as far as possible, if you can keep them happy, then what that means is that they're less likely, stress that, less likely to write to the council objecting to what you propose to do. It also means as well that you have certain modest proposals you can probably carry out without applying, and the neighbours aren't going to complain to the council. But if there is a neighbour who you know is likely to cause difficulties, or you've had a bit of a run-in on something else completely unrelated to amateur radio, then that probably means that they're likely to object. Now, simply having an objection from a neighbour doesn't mean that the planning permission will be refused, because the planning officer has to assess any proposal on its individual merit. As I say, the first consideration is the effect it will have on the wider area in visual terms. So if it's a 20-metre mast with a large yagi on it, that is much more obvious over a wider area. I'm disappointed that more than often we're getting responses from councils that the amateur radio installations are not in character with the residential area. Well, I'm sorry. That is just a misunderstanding of the nature of it as a hobby activity. And it, as you say, it's largely because these days there aren't many amateur radio operators out there. And so, yes, many of the junior staff in the local authorities have not come across these developments before. And they'll say, out of character with the residential area, full stop. Well, I just can't, as a professional planner, I cannot accept that as a matter of principle. If that ran through as a matter of principle, we would never get any aerials for anything. I'm often asked, can we not lobby government to get a reference to amateur radio? We've tried. The reference to amateur radio in national guidance was withdrawn in 2012. Prior to that, it said amateur radio installations generally cause no difficulties in residential areas. That was withdrawn. We've tried recently to get some reference to amateur radio back in. They're just not interested. They just don't want to know. It's not seen as an issue. So it's left to local authorities to set their own policies, and so we get a different approach in different local authorities. So it's potluck as to which local authority you're in. And if you're in England, you're going to find it a lot more difficult than in Wales, where there's still national reference to amateur radio in the policy guidance. You're absolutely right that you need to keep your neighbours on side, but even if you do get neighbour objections, don't give up the ghost. Don't say, oh well, that's it. I've got an objection from the neighbour, I've got no chance. No, that's not true. The local planners should assess it on individual merit, and there should be a direct effect. It's not, I say in my support letter, it's not enough just because a neighbour says, oh, I don't like the look of it. So what? You have a right to do what you wish on your own property unless it has a direct effect and a wider effect. Simply the neighbour being able to see it, in my view, is not enough. It should not warrant a refusal of planning permission on those grounds. I personally, not just as a professional planner or as an amateur radio operator, but I do feel very strongly on that point. I really can't stress it more strongly. There's a message that I intend to try to get out there to my own professional colleagues if I can. I intend to write to the local authority associations to see if I might be able to get some sort of guidance issued through that medium to local authority planners. If the central government won't do it, maybe the RSGB can, and that's something I want to take forward as the chairman of the Planning Advisory Committee for the RSGB.
You can hear the full interview with John by visiting the ICQ Podcast YouTube channel at youtube.com/ICQ Podcast. New at Hamfest this year was a commercial PMR company looking to cross over into the amateur radio market. Martin MNRB spoke to Zycomm about their offerings.
Something a little bit different this year. I managed to find a stand with Zycomm. Now, I know Zycomm from my days as being a PMR engineer and Zycomm being a distributor. I'm with Andrew. Andrew, can you tell us a bit more about what you're here doing today and a bit more about the company?
Yeah, well, Zycomm have been going 35 years, well, over 35 years now. We're a distributor, we're a direct sales company, and we're also a wireless broadband company. We do PMR, we do DMR, and we thought it was a good idea to come along to Hamfest to show radio users, professional radio people, what's available nowadays with the modern equipment.
Yeah, and I think it's good because you've brought a range of Hytera along and some Kenwwod radios. Have you had much interest from the amateur market here today? We've
had an awful lot of interest in the DMR side of things. People are beginning to get to know Hytera properly now in the radio market, in the ham radio market, and they're just seeing the build quality of it. And we've had lots and lots of inquiries and lots of forward things that I need to do when I get back to the office on Monday.
All right. And one of the things that, if some of the guys who've never come across Hytera, it is a quality brand from China. It's not one of the cheap brands, it is a quality brand, and I can honestly say this because I've worked on the stuff, but it is good stuff, isn't it?
Oh, it very much is good stuff. It's one of those things, you get what you pay for. The quality of Hytera on the mobiles as well as the handheld portables, the quality is fantastic. People have been noticing that when they've picked them up today, and they've really said, wow. One of the mobiles we bought with us, the 785G, that's got built-in GPS with it. There's no fan, so there's no fan to go wrong because the quality of the build, it's all there.
Yeah, and I remember the 785. That was a brilliant radio. I've used them, when I was in the industry. But you're more than just a reseller because you're actually a distributor and you have all the full backup as well, don't you?
We do. We've got a full set of engineers, radio engineers that go out maintaining, go out installing. We've got a customer service team. We've got a sales team. We're a full 360-degree company. We distribute Kenwwod. We sell Hytera to the end users. Motorola, take anything that's radio required, we will make sure we can give the customer what they need, not what we want to sell them.
Yeah, that's a very, very important point. So I take it you stock the full range of Hytera equipment?
Yeah, we stock the whole full range of Hytera, even including the latest PDC 760, the push-to-talk over cellular. We've got another push-to-talk over cellular that we use. So we're right up with all the modern equipment as well.
Right. So, I mean, I've been out of the PMR industry a little while, but I did notice the push-to-talk options coming in, and I assume they run under Zello, do they?
No, the one we use, the IPTT, it's got its own independent server. Yes, it goes over the 4G, 3G network, but it's a lot more secure, it's a lot more private.
Well, that's great. And, I mean, certainly for amateurs, or if you amateurs, you work for a company that work in London, there are so few frequencies, and I know Ofcom released a few extra UHF ones in London, but push-to-talk over cellular has got to be an option, isn't it?
It has to be an option when there isn't frequencies available, like you said, in London. To get a UHF frequency in London is like winning the Euro Millions when it's £500 million jackpot. You've got one in a God knows how many multi-million chances. We had an occasion where, I don't know if you remember the bomb in Manchester. Well, Manchester's like London, it's full of UHF, and there was real problems for them to get a new UHF licence. They had to get the chief of police involved, they had to get the chief of the fire brigade involved to speak to Ofcom to get the licence to renew their radio system. So in London, once again, push-to-talk, it doesn't need a licence, it's not taking up any bandwidth from anybody, it's there, it works straight away.
Yeah, that sounds good. So there's lots and lots of options that Zycomm do. Now, one last thing before we go. What seems to be the favourite radio for the amateurs at the show here today?
I would say the 785, the PD 785GV.
Right, and that's the mobile?
That's the mobile and the handheld.
Yeah.
On VHF rather than UHF.
Oh, that surprises me.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the things. They're used a lot in the farming industry and a lot in the kind of outer door stuff. And the VHF just goes a little bit longer, a little bit further.
Yeah. Well, that's a physical thing, but
yes,
that's great. That's great. Well, listen, I'm going to wish you every success at the show. Hopefully, we'll see you again next year, and keep up the good work for us.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew.
There's been lots of rumours about changes to the exam structure in the UK, so we sat down with Tony Kent, the chair of the RSGB's exam committee, who gave us an update on the work they're doing on modernising the UK 3-tier licensing system.
We're still at the National Hamvention up here, and I'm with Tony from the RSGB, who's heavily involved in training, has got the real answers to the new syllabus, not the it might be this or I've heard that rumour there. I've got the main man who's going to tell us exactly what's going down. So, Tony, give us your call sign and then tell us what's happening.
Okay, I'm Tony, G8PBH, and I'm the chair of the RSGB Examination Standards Committee. So we have the job of overseeing the exams and the syllabus and all that related stuff. So, as you are probably aware, a new syllabus has been created, which is going to become live in just about a year's time from now. And this new syllabus was created for really to address two things. Is one, to bring the content up to date, reflecting the new technologies that are in amateur radio. For example, if you just go around here now, you'll see very popular people walking around having bought IC 7300s, which are SDR-based radios. So the new syllabus will reflect this by having some material about SDR across the levels. The other main thing we needed to address was the fact that Ofcom had a feeling that the current intermediate level was rather too low, too close to foundation, and this had two problems. One, it meant that the pass rate was too high for the privileges that were being afforded to that level, and secondly, it left a very big step from intermediate to advanced, which was full, should I say, which was causing people to drop by the wayside. So both of those key things we sought to address in the new syllabus, as well as updating things like changes in licence conditions, health and safety, and various of the other things that had to be done.
Yeah, well, that sounds interesting, because if we don't update, there would still be questions on stuff that happened in the 1920s.
Crystal radios.
Yeah, crystal radios and that sort of thing. So we are moving forward. Now, I've heard, and if this puts you on the spot, I don't mean to, the new syllabus is more about comprehension and not just regurgitation.
No, the educational standard or educational level of let's take foundation as a starting point, because that is the key one that bothers people, because that's where we bring young people, hopefully, into the hobby, so that has to be at the right place. We have not changed the educational level of foundation. There has been an increase in material, we won't deny that, because we've introduced some new topics. As I say, we've had to put more stuff into the licensing, we've had to put a bit more stuff into health and safety, and we've introduced, of course, at that level, a very, very basic understanding of SDR, basically to understand that it exists as an alternative architecture to the others. So yes, there is more material, but we have not made it educationally harder in terms of the level of understanding of materials is required, as opposed to being able to recall facts.
Well, that's good news, because certainly the rumour machine was saying that the foundation was going to be far, far harder and that sort of thing. It
depends how you... I mean, you could argue that because there's a bit more stuff, it's harder. Yeah?
Yeah.
But I mean, we're thinking that some people are saying that it's at a higher educational standard, and we're saying it's not. It's only... There's a perception it might be harder because there's more material.
Right. But then, if somebody wants to learn about radio, and we're giving them more modern and more material and more modern, I mean, I would have, years ago when I did mine, I did the RAE, but years ago I'd have ripped your hand off for far more information. So quite honestly, I can't see why anybody would worry about this.
I think you're right. I think that it is a technical hobby. And I think it's if you like, the need to learn and to understand. I mean, otherwise you can pick up a mobile phone, can't you? And you can talk on the radio. But people coming into amateur radio want to understand how it works. They want to play around, experiment. And so you're absolutely right. Asking people to perhaps know that there's a new technology like SDR shouldn't put them off of wanting to, in fact it should encourage them actually to want to get into the hobby.
Yeah, and I think some of the more younger members that we are inviting into our hobby, some of the new technologies they will certainly enjoy. And things like SDR and all these other new technologies that are coming along, the new digital modes, they're the sort of thing that really excite the youngsters. So it's a good move. And I think the other thing which is good from our point of view and our 3-tier license system is there are practicals at foundation and intermediate, and they, to me, are what sets us apart from other parts of the world in many ways.
Indeed, I mean the practical requirement is quite unique, and certainly very attractive to at foundation level to get people to get their hands on and get a bit of experience. And also when they come, I mean, you remember that perhaps in our time, you said you did the original RAE. We spent hours listening on shortwave and various things. That's how we got our practical. It's a little bit different now. It's a little bit more structured, but I think all the better for it.
Yeah, well, as you say, we spent hours listening, and then when you learn to drive a car, fly a plane or a boat, you actually do it under supervision. And when we did our licence, you weren't allowed to go on the radio until you passed, and that was silly.
Yeah. Well, you could say that, although we did all right, didn't we?
Yeah, we survived. But there's certainly good news. So it's coming in, the new system's coming in August next year?
Yet. So beginning of September. The new syllabus will be coming live.
Yeah. Now, I haven't actually fully checked it out, but I think there's more work to be done, but to rewrite some of the syllabus, so, the training notes for the trainers. Yeah. So I've got to work on that. But I'm actually looking forward to it, and I think it's a positive step because we can't leave things as unmodified as they were like 10, 15 years ago, can we?
I think that's right, and I think this is the first update we've had for, to my knowledge, 10 years at least. And so it was sort of past its sell-by date in some respects, the current syllabus needing to be updated. Hopefully in future we'll try and keep up to date with it on a more regular basis. But certainly now I think it reflects the state of the hobby as it stands now with the movements in technology. And also the other requirements. I mean, we have to be far more concerned about safety now, for example, and reflect the new rules on electromagnetic radiation levels and everything. So people need to know a lot more.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because the electromagnetic radiation thing was something that didn't surprise me, but it really got me when I did my US license. I did the US license as well, and they were far more on electrical safety and electromagnetic compatibility and that sort of thing, because they run much higher power than us. And it's surprising. There's one question I've caught a lot of UK hams out on is, and I can't remember exactly, but it goes something along the lines of, which is the most dangerous to humans, 80 metres, 6 metres, 2 metres or 23 seconds? And I won't put you on the spot, it's 6 metres, because large parts of our body are resonant at 6 metres, and if you're running 1.5 kilowatts as they do in the States, it becomes far more important. So it's some of these things that are good to get into people, aren't they?
Yeah, well, certainly now as we live, changed. I mean, people are living now much closer together. When you see new developments of houses, people are much closer to their neighbours. They need to be aware of these things. So inevitably we have to increase some material in some areas to reflect this.
Yeah, so it's a matter of sort of educating the radio amateur so that they can talk sensibly to Joe Public, who is potentially worried about seeing things going up like that. So that's good, but cool.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, anything else you'd like to tell us, Tony, while you're here, what you're up to? So
currently the examinations group, who are a working group within the Examination Standards Committee, are working very hard on setting fresh examination questions. So we have to populate the bank. This is not only in connection with the new syllabus, but it's also so that we have a suitably sized question bank for the incoming online examinations, which many people have now experienced. Many advantages over the old system, like instant results, but we need to increase the question bank. So the committee and related groups are working hard now on getting that question bank populated with the questions under the old, or let's say the current syllabus, as well as the new syllabus that's coming in. And actually, I mean, I could take this opportunity. Yeah. I don't know, people that might be listening to this, that we're always interested. If there's people out there that with a particular expertise in some of the areas, propagation, radio technology, licensing, who would like to help by contributing some questions, we're very happy to receive those. We'll take them in, we'll put them through our vetting and moderation procedure, and then enter them into the question bank. So that would be much appreciated.
Well, that's a very good thing to do, and it does give people an opportunity to become part of the greater. Having been an instructor and having written some stuff for training revision type questions, it's not as easy as people think. No. So you can't be ambiguous, and it has to be spot on. So yeah, please get involved, and I'm sure Tony would love to have your help on that one. Yes,
certainly. Contact us first, and we can provide some information to guidance on writing questions, and which will help.
Yeah. So I thank you very much, Tony, for your time, and may I wish you every success in the future.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Next up, Chris Howard, Mike Zero Tango Charlie Hotel, caught up with Mark Haynes from Kenwwod, who provided us with a quick update on the new Kenwwod TS890S that we first saw in Friedrichshafen earlier on in the year.
Morning, Mark.
Morning, hello.
And Mark, I believe the new Kenwwod rig, the TS890, is now for sale.
Yeah, so we've had our first batch here in the UK since last week. Dealers have been quite busy, I think, taking inquiries and sales of the first units. Here you can see it. We have it on the Kenwwod stand here for people to come and have a look. As we expected, if not better, from the original specifications. And we're here at the moment listening to RTTY. It's the CQ Worldwide RTTY contest, so it's quite convenient for the show, so we can demonstrate its capability of decoding the RTTY. So yeah, it has a very high performance receiver, and the measurements that we've taken at Kenwwod demonstrate that, and we're looking forward to other third parties doing those measurements as well. And it has CW decode and encode capability, so you can actually use it as a CW trainer as well, and you get the text come up as you're keying away, which is quite useful and unique. So as we expected, HF 6 and 4 meters, 100 watts on HF and 6 with 50 watts on 4 meters on the European model. It has the DVI out, so you can extend the screen, so it's a replica of this screen here. And it has 2 antenna ports. It's set up for remote, very easy for remote. There's actually a separate manual that Kenwwod have produced for remote to take you through the steps, but it is literally a LAN cable in the back of the radio straight into an internet router, and then you can use our free ARCP 890 software for actually operating at the other end of the 890.
That's cool. So it's out. What's the price?
So retail price is $4,299 here in the UK. Maybe possible to get a deal. Speak to your favourite dealer for that.
Excellent. Okay, Mark, thank you very much, and good luck at the show.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
If you've been lucky enough to get your hands on one of the very first batch of the Kenwwod TS890S, love to hear your thoughts on the radio. You can contact us via the contact form on the ICQ podcast website page. The ICQ podcast would like to congratulate Essex Hams on winning the RSGB Large Club of the Year award, and of course we caught up with the winners.
I'm joined by guys from the Essex Hams today who've done very well of pulling just about most of the prizes out of the club awards today. I'm with Pete. Pete, you're really the instigator of Essex Hams. How's it going?
Very good. Very pleased today that we've been recognised. We've been going since 2011, and this is the first time we've actually been here as the Club of the Year. So first place, Large Club of the Year. And we're all smiles, aren't we, guys?
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah. So it wasn't only Club of the Year you won a lot of other things today, didn't you?
It wasn't actually today. So we got Region 12 Club of the Year. That was awarded at the AGM. And also we were recently awarded the Kenwwod Trophy for recognition towards training, because a big thing we do is the online training. So to get some national recognition from that was really good.
That's really brilliant, Pete. And I know you arranged lots of things. Now, in the middle next year is the Superstar, the one everybody wants to work on the air. So Dorothy. Dorothy, hello.
Hello.
So what got you into the hobby?
Just wanting to talk to my husband Richard on ham radio, and I got into the hobby through that. My foundation, whipped through in 18 months to my fall. Absolutely love the hobby. I can't get enough of it. Just love being on air. Just absolute buzz for it. Really love it very much indeed.
Yeah, that's great. And we see some great pictures of you and the team out operating in the lovely sunshine. So you must really enjoy it.
I do very much indeed. I like doing HF and 2 meters a lot of the time. Just really enjoy chatting out in the sunshine, lovely air, all different antennas that are up all over the place. Just enjoy playing radios all the time. Good fun.
Now the gentleman next to Dorothy is commonly known as Mr. Dorothy. However, Richard, you're not really in the background, are you?
Yes, most of the time. You can always hear my voice, but yes, I'm always in the background. Locally, they call me One Over because I pick up the mic, give a call, and all of a sudden, she needs to speak to them.
So there you go.
Literally One Over, yeah. But no, it's good. I'm pleased to have my wife. When I die, she knows how much the radios are worth.
You ain't told her yet?
She bought most of them. I was never allowed to spend that kind of money before she got licensed.
But it's nice that both of you are in the hobby because it gives you something to talk about and some fun.
Yes, very much fun. Yeah, it's good. It's good to have that in common.
Yeah. So the guy at the end, who's trying to ignore me, is young Charlie. Charlie, you're holding the lovely trophy that you've been awarded today, but you do a lot of other things, software development, and very, very involved with Essex Hams, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't just hold very heavy paperweights. I wear a lot of other hats. Software development. I have my own logging software that I think you might have featured once or twice on the podcast. It's difficult finding time for something I enjoy because I have to earn some money at the end of the day, but I try and do as much in the hobby as I can. And obviously today's kind of proved that putting that time in is very worthwhile.
Well, I say some really interesting piece of software, and I met you a few times, and you say nice guy. And I'm going to grass you up a little bit now. I'm going to say that you suggested using that as a weight to hold the gazebo down.
I did. Well, you've got to sort of think, well, what's in my box today when you're rummaging around for something in the middle of a field? And if you happen to have a great big glass paperweight and it's a little bit breezy outside, needs must. And we hams, we hate spending real money.
Too right, we do. Yeah. Thanks. So, Pete, come on now. You last words on what you guys are going to get up to for the rest of the year and going forward next year.
Oh, loads of stuff. So online training is a big thing for us. Obviously, we've got a syllabus change, so there's a whole bunch of changes that we've got to do to support that. We've had our busiest year, I think, with field days, haven't we? Pretty much every 2 or 3 weekends we've been out. Yeah, about 17 field events this year, which is good. We're a few weeks away from a very big JOTA, 250 scouts in the south of Essex to look after. And of course, 2 weeks ago, Essex Air Ambulance. So did 3 days with them, raising a bit of awareness for the Essex Air Ambulance. And we've been doing stuff with GB1 NHS. So looking at trying to involve hospitals and the NHS and amateur radio. So lots of plans. We're going to be very busy. Already started planning for next year. So yes, we'll tell you next year what we've been up to, I'm sure.
When you win next year's trophy, I expect. No. You guys do a hell of a lot, and there's a big team behind you in Essex that are certainly enjoying amateur radio. And we see your internet posts and things like that, which is fun, and you're actually promoting a hobby in a really great light. So thank you very much for talking to me today, and I wish you every success going forward.
Happy hamming!
There always appears to be something going on with SDRPlay. Andy provided an update to Chris Howard, M0TCH.
We last had a chat back in, I think it was June, back at Friedrichshafen.
It was first week of June in Friedrichshafen. Yeah, we just launched the RSP Duo.
Yeah, so how's that gone?
It's gone incredibly well. We've been quite surprised by the uptake. People looking for what they can do with 2 tuners in a single box. So now the software's got to catch up with where the hardware is.
Yeah, absolutely. So how is that going? I know you were saying last time there's quite a lot of exciting things that can be done with this hardware. So how are you getting on actually making that work then in the software?
Yeah, so on Windows, everything is in place for doing things like diversity, noise cancellation, and direction finding, that sort of stuff. We've been working on the non-Windows side so that can catch up. And just before, in fact, yesterday I was testing the non-Windows version of the API, and we're putting that into SOAPy, so we can test it with Cubic SDR on Linux and Mac OS and Raspberry Pi. So that's in testing, and that'll be out very soon.
That's cool. And you said something earlier about scanning. Is some scanning functionality coming?
Yeah, so in SDR Uno, next version of SDR Uno is well underway. We've got quite a few improvements and changes to that. The main one is probably frequency scanning. So it'll be arbitrary frequency scan, start, stop, step, with a few extra features. So yeah, that's going to be, it's been a long-standing request, and I think it'll be, hopefully it'll be a good use for people.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've got myself, and that's certainly something I would find useful, is to have that feature. In terms of other areas, so you showed me earlier, you've got this device here. This is is it a Pi top?
So we came across via RS. Said we've got these Pi tops. Can you do anything with them? So it's quite a nice box. Basically, you get the frame and the screen, and then you add a Raspberry Pi to it, and then you've got this kind of bus along here where you can add you can do different experiments. So I just thought, well, let's take an RSP1A. It just snugly fits in there, and you've now got a sort of a mobile listening system. So we can just, it's a fully functioning laptop, keyboard, mouse. It's got a battery inside. So literally just connect it up to an antenna, and away you go. You've got all the software on there to do some listening wherever you want.
So it's a fully self-contained receiver, essentially, based on SDR technology.
Absolutely. This was an older version of the Pi top. Next week we're going to be getting the latest version, and we'll do some modifications to that, and just to show. A lot of people come to us and say, we've got these Raspberry Pis, they're sitting on the shelf, we don't know what to do with them. They could be a bit, by the time you've got a battery and the time you've got the RSP, but this is kind of just a neat sort of all-in-one package. I've also added a rotary encoder on the side, so we can do frequency control with a dial, because I know we all like dials.
Well, in the SDR world, it's now mice, of course, but I suppose you can use those devices, can't you? And in terms of applications for this sort of technology, I'm thinking schools and people want to work mobile, that sort of thing.
Well, I think the Pi top, was originally intended for educational purposes. So what I was intending to do is to put GNU Radio, in here, and then show that as a kind of as a complete educational package, really. So you can basically take this and show people. You can use GNU Radio to build radios, and it's all inside.
Cool, that's really, really good. Okay, cool, Andy, thanks so much for your time, good luck, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, good to see you.
Cheers.
Okay, cheers.
Martin M1MRB found out about the history and activities of VMARS, the Vintage and Military Amateur Radio Society, from Stuart, Golf Zero, Tango Bravo, India.
I found Stuart from VMARS. Stuart, tell us about yourself, what you do here.
Right, well, I'm Public Relations Officer for the Vintage and Military Amateur Radio Society. We formed this group back in 1999, so next year we'll celebrate our 20th anniversary. Now, VMARS is an organisation of people who collect, repair, research, historical, ex-military and also commercial, maritime, whatever you'd like to see in the way of vintage equipment. And basically we keep the hobby alive with regard to vintage equipment. But it just doesn't cover communications equipment. It also covers things like historical research, modes of communication, semaphore, teleprinter operating, line telephone exchanges. Anything you think about in the way of communications, VMARS has a foothold in, and especially now that we've got 560 members. We started off back in 1999, having held our inaugural AGM at Station X, Bletchley Park. 45 members turned up. We're now 560. So I think that's a credit to the members that have come to join us and all their individual expertises that we've got.
I think that's absolute brilliant there, Stuart. Generating that number of members, and the military radio side of our hobby is quite a little bit specialised, but I know quite a few people who do it, and it is interesting. It's slightly different, but it is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I say, with our 560 members, we do have a lot of ex-military people, whether it be Navy, Army or Air Force. I'm ex-Army myself. So I knew a little bit about different genres of radios from the late 60s right the way through to the late 80s, early 90s. So my expertise covers a sort of a fairly broad band there. But our members typically collect equipment from sort of World War II right the way through to present day. And as I say, if they're not ex-military, some are historians, some are general radio amateurs, some are shortwave listeners, and some are ex-government defence workers. So they've got even more knowledge than some of us radio amateurs have. So we all pull that knowledge. We've got an extensive archive. And of course, we've got a publications editor who's here today, Bronik Vedzika. You may want to have a chat with him shortly, and he can tell you more on the publication side. But we certainly have a wide remit within VMARS.
Yeah, that sounds great. So, I mean, I know in sort of the club I'm a member of, there's probably 5% of the members. That doesn't sound many, but it's a reasonable number that are interested in military radio,
yes,
and more people are coming along.
Absolutely. Well, that's the case, I think, in most radio clubs. We often get people coming here from the individual radio clubs, especially here at the Newark Hamfest, from up and down the country, and say, oh, we've got one of those in our club, or we're doing a project in our club. And of course, it works both ways then. We can either recruit them to become members of VMARS or share our information and skills with them. So we're always happy to complement what the public desire from us, if you like, and vice versa. Because quite often we'll recruit a member, or they'll recruit themselves, and there'll be a super duper member who's got that little bit of font of knowledge about something because we don't know everything, about something we didn't know of before. And we've got quite a few clandestine people as well. Some people who, done quite some cool things in their time, from the days of Bletchley Park and through to the days of the Falklands campaign, Bosnia, the Gulf War. So we've got a lot of specialists out there, not only Army, as I say, Air Force and Navy.
Yeah. Well, I know a couple of guys that are really into what you do, and I'm sure they're members.
Indeed, they may well be. I don't know who they are, but I'm sure they will be. And if they're not, they can always look on our website, www.vmars.org. And a very nice website, actually. We've got a young man, a former chairman called Ian Underwood, Fox 4 Victor Sugar Charlie, previously Mike 0 Yankee Mike Kilo. Ian has just revamped the website, and you really need to look at that website because it's absolutely brilliant, and it's got all the information you need about VMARS.
Now, just before we pull your colleague in, I've noticed outside you've got a couple of stations and Land Rovers, so you've actually got a demonstration as well as a stand here.
We have actually. This year, we in 2016, let me just say, we ran a WS19, a wireless set 19 station outside with the high power amplifier, just as it would have been sort of in 1942, 1944, whatever, and post-war. And that was very successful. Last year was a bit of a false start, and we didn't do anything. But this year, two of our members have turned up, one with a Series 3 Land Rover, signals vehicle, and the other one also with a Series 3 lightweight Land Rover, little air portable Land Rover, which are quite rare and very well sought after. And both have got military equipment in of the day, fully operational, and they've actually been on air from here at Hamfest, not only on the VMARS 80 metre net, they've been on 40 metres. We've just gone on to 60 metres this afternoon, 5 megahertz, and they've had fantastic reports just using a half-wave dipole up at about 35 feet. Military spec one, I hasten to add. So I think really the average report has been 5 and 8 to 5 and 9, and some at 20 over 9. So you can't get better than that. And I know that the showground organisers here at Hamfest have welcomed us with open arms, and I must take this opportunity to thank the organising committee of Hamfest for all that they do for the clubs and societies that take part in the event.
Stuart's colleague Bronik also showed Martin a build of an RF deck from an 80-metre transmitter. That part of the interview is available on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ICQ podcast, where so you can have a look at the transmitter that Bronik built. Now, Martin's not seen the new Yaesu FT100DX, and to be honest, none of us have seen it without a Perspex glass over the top of it until Hamfest. Martin called up with Carl Brazier from Yaesu to find out more about this exciting rig, which will be coming soon.
Okay, so the FTDX 101D is a hybrid SDR radio. It has two independent receivers, a sub and a main receiver. It has two SDRs within that for each receiver, so you have a wideband receiver which drives the display here, so you can display up to 1 megahertz of bandwidth in each waterfall display. And then in addition, we have a narrowband SDR, which is the one that drives the audio decoding so that you can then listen to the audio.
That sounds really interesting. And you mentioned it's a hybrid SDR, and I know I was talking to Dean a few minutes ago, and he's saying the reason you've gone that route is because there are performance advantages of the original radio, and you're taking advantage of both technologies.
Yes, that's correct. So one of the problems is if you sample the signal directly, and then you have, say, a very strong signal and a very weak signal next to each other, you either have a problem where you've got to turn the gain down so that the strong signal is not intermodulating across the waterfall, and then you can't hear the weak signal, or if you turn the gain up to hear the weak signal, then of course the strong signal intermodulates, you get lots of artifacts on the display. So the way we've got round that is to have two SDRs, one to drive the waterfall and then a narrowband SDR with the suitable front end filtering, and that's the one that you hear. That's the one that you hear the audio from.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I've got to say, this is a very pretty radio. I mean, it's the first time I've seen it at this range, and this time it's not under a glass bubble like it was at Freehold.
No, that's correct. You can actually touch this and use it if you wish, yes.
Yeah, well, I'd love to use it, but you do have an area on it for receive. But in fairness, I don't think we've got a particularly good area here, but I'd love to play with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds very good. It's got very good audio and very easy to listen to. And because you've got the addition of the waterfall display, it makes hunting signals much more easy.
Certainly sounds it. And if you're covering, say, a meg of bandwidth, you're covering more than most HF bands, the whole of an HF band. So, you'll be able to see the whole lot, won't you?
You will, and also if you want, you can actually reduce the bandwidth so you can make it cover just the HF band that you're interested in.
Well, that's great.
So this one now, as I say, we had the two independent receivers. We've got the ability we can easily select main and subs here, and we've got two controls. So you've got the main tuning control.
Yeah.
And then here we've got a multi-function secondary control, which you can select and actually control the sub-frequency as well. So you can independently tune two frequencies at once.
Well, that's very interesting, and that's quite nice. I like that.
And also because although some people like to drive things from the touch screen, which indeed you can, a lot of people have obviously like to operate a radio with rotary controls. So most of the functions of the radio can be controlled by the touch buttons or by the dials and controls.
So effectively, if people like me that like buttons and knobs and pushing are going to be happy, the very youngsters who are coming into our hobby are going to be excited about the touchscreen display.
Yes. So everyone's happy. You've got the best of both worlds. Yeah.
Well, that sounds great. That sounds great. Now, you have a matching speaker with it. It fits, works very well, obviously, with your high-range microphone. So it's an all-round package, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I think it proves popular. And we'll also have two versions. We will have a 100-watt version and a 200-watt version.
So 200 watts for those of you who just want that bit more cloud warming. From a QRP operator, I can't help it.
You've got to keep that ionosphere ionised, haven't you?
Certainly have. Listen, Carl, thank you very much. I know it's the end of the day and you're starting to pack up. You've been very, very busy with me, and I'm grateful for you giving us your time, Carl.
You're welcome.
And we end with the youth of our hobby as the RSGB Youth Committee's Ben talks to Martin about the activities that they'll be conducting throughout the end of the year.
Still at the National Hamfest, and I'm lucky to be with Ben. Ben's part of the youth team at the RSGB, and you went out to IOTA 2018. So, Ben, you're probably able to tell us a little bit about that before some of the other things you get onto.
I did. The IOTA South Africa trip was enormously good fun. We went for a week to South Africa, kindly sponsored by the RSGB, and we did all sorts, from kit building to launching a high-altitude balloon and chasing it down. And we talked satellites, built our own antennas, and it was excellently good fun, all things considered.
Yeah, it sounds a real fun, and I know Martin and I, who's on the other end of the camera, would have loved to have done that years ago when we were much younger. So I think it's great. So we were at Gilwell Park, and while we were at Gilwell Park, we noticed that a certain amount of friendship took place between the amateurs.
Yes, I got to meet all sorts of amateurs from all over Region 1. It was really good fun, and there were even African amateurs there. There was a chap from the Maasai Warriors who was a radio ham, and I was quite impressed.
Yeah, that sounds really, really interesting. So, looks like you have a lot of fun on these Iota events. Now, I'm told that you are coordinating Iota Month. Is that correct?
Yes, so we're running Iota Month 2018, and that's going to be GB18 Iota is the call sign. And we want to try and get stations to host this special event station over the course of December. So hopefully every single day we will be broadcasting from somewhere in the country on GB18 Iota. And we're really looking for participating clubs to apply to us to take up one or two of the days and hopefully run some youth activities at the same time and try and get young people interested and on the air. That's really the aim.
Yeah, sounds good. So, you're hoping that the club's going to put on something that will encourage youngsters into our hobby.
Yeah.
And that sounds really, really good. And to have the 2018 Iota call sign, it's got to be really a good feather in the cap for a club, hasn't it?
Yeah, it makes you sort of rare DX. So you've got a lot of pile-ups potentially and people wanting to talk to you so they can get that call sign in their logbook. It's quite rare to speak to young people on the air, so I guess it makes it desirable. So if you are an interested club, please do get in contact, because we do need you.
Yeah, well, as I say, that's the important thing of getting the young clubs involved. And, I have a club, or I'm a member of a club that has some very young members, which is very, very good. And what the clubs should have to realise is that the young members do bring new ideas through into our hobby, and you have a different outlook on older subjects sometimes that actually are very, very refreshing.
Yeah, of course, with all of the new tech in amateur radio, SDR and the like, it's becoming very exciting, I think, for young people and young engineers who want to just experiment with all of the interesting new things going on.
With that in mind then, how would somebody get involved as a club for Iota Month?
Okay, so if you want to be involved as a club for Iota Month, you need to go to the RSGB website, find our page on Iota Month, and there should be a web form that you fill out, and that will just require details of when you want to run the event. Hopefully you'll have people CRBS checked so that you can invite young people to your club. What sort of events you want to run, for instance ARDF or that sort of thing. And then we'll hopefully schedule you in and give you the forms to do the notice of variation on your license so you can host the special event station.
Yeah, so that sounds good. So all in all, December's going to be a great month for all of us, working all these Iota stations that you're coordinating. So I look forward to December. Give us something to do in the poor dark evenings.
Yes, hopefully.
I'd like to say thank you very much, Ben, for chatting to us. It's been great, and let me wish you every success in the hobby.
Thank you very much.
Well, I really hope you enjoyed our roundup of Hamfest 2018. I'd like to finish up with thanks to all the many listeners that introduced themselves to us at the show and thanked us for what we do. We really do appreciate that feedback. It was very, very humbling to meet so many of you at the show. Things like events like this couldn't take place without your donations. We had to do some marketing spend. We were at the show and we were able to do it with the donations we received recently. So I really would ask you guys to help us out by visiting www.icqpodcast.com/donate, where anything you can send away is always greatly appreciated. The presenters who were at the show, it was Martin Rothwell, Martin Butler, so Martin M1MRB, and Martin M0 Sierra Golf Lima, Chris, Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel, Edmund, Mike 0 Mike November Golf, and myself all pay their own expenses to attend the show. As I say, so anything so you can send away to help us out will be greatly, greatly appreciated. You know how to do it, guys. ICQpodcast.com/donate, as I say, would be greatly received. To our colleagues who couldn't make it, you were asked for our American cousins, to our expat in Germany, and also, of course, to our local guys who couldn't make the weekend for various reasons. You were missed, and our listeners did ask you on many, many occasions. I can genuinely say that and say that from there. So, guys, hopefully you appreciated the roundup. And as I say, we'll be booked in to do this all again in a year's time, as they say. Hope you enjoyed again, guys. Thank you.
The ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast, serving the amateur ham radio community fortnightly since 2008.
Well, guys, I really hope you enjoyed our special feature on Hamfest 2018. Many thanks again to Chris, Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike 0 Sierra Golf Lima, Edmund, Mike 0 Mike November Golf, and obviously Martin, Mike 1 Mike Romeo Bravo for helping us out there at Hamfest there. So as always, it's our donations that keep this show advert free and help us pay our way out there. So Danny Robertson, Golf Mike 6, Charlie Mike Quebec, Avi Solomon, Brett Stelblum, and Matthews, Golf 1 Victor Whiskey Charlie. Thank you very much for your donations in this episode. As we always keep saying, guys, if you find value in the show, don't let others pay the way. We'll say visit icqpodcast.com/donate. Well, anything that's in the way is always greatly appreciated and keeps your podcast advert free. As always, we'd like you to check us out, join the Facebook group, join up to the e-newsletter to keep updated on what's going on over the fortnight when we're away. Twitter handles as well, at Colin Butler and at M1MRB are updated as well over the 2-week period between shows. Next episode, we have on episode 279 a recording from RSGB convention where we talk about the future of amateur radio. With, as I say, a panel including the RSGB chairman Ian Shepherd, and as I say, and also joined by many amateurs in the room to discuss the way the hobby's going. So I hope you really enjoy that, guys. We'd like to thank Matthew Mike 0 November Juliet X-Ray and Bill November 3 Juliet India X-Ray for their contribution in the roundtable. Thanks a lot, guys, for joining us there. And check out YouTube, youtube.com/ICQ podcast, where you'll see some of the videos from Hamfest 2018 posted on there. As I say, you can also see some of the content and some of the longer interviews there in their full format there. Well, it's my turn to go make my YL a cup of tea, so I'm going to go do that. And as this is a very early morning record to finish off the show, I may need to make a bit of scrambled eggs on toast as well for our breakfast. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll catch up with you all again in a fortnight's time. 73s.